I know what you're thinking of doing. But they don't come back the same.
Daddy.
Do you know what might be the scariest thing in horror? The prefix re. Nothing seems to spook horror fans more than reboots, remakes, and recalibrations. With new trailers for a remake of Pet Sematary and a reboot of Child's Play taking over everyone's news feeds this past week, it feels like a good time to step back and review them. Alright, let's look at remakes first. Horror remakes have been a thing for almost as long as horror movies themselves. Once sound appeared in movies, it was only a matter of time before films were being remade for a listening audience, with a number of films like Mark of the Vampire and The Hunchback of Notre Dame revisiting Lon Chaney classics from the silent era. By 1941, there had been 7 US theatrical adaptations of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde alone. So remakes aren't a new thing in horror by any stretch. If you're looking for clarification, I'd say that a remake is something that revisits a single film. Mark of the Vampire is a remake of London After Midnight. The Wolfman got remade in 2010, and hopefully will again soon with Blumhouse. Now, by that definition, the new version of Pet Sematary we're looking at is a remake. By all accounts, it's a standalone film that revisits the story from Stephen King's original novel. Now, technically, you'd call the upcoming Child's Play movie a remake as well, but I'd actually file that one as a reboot, since I assume there's hope that it will spawn a franchise like the first film did. Now, this is where things get tricky, because if you're following along at home, you know that the original Child's Play franchise is still thriving under creator Don Mancini. That all boils down to some weird rights stuff where MGM owns the original Child's Play, while all the Chucky sequels and upcoming television series are with Universal. Now, I should clarify that maybe the only thing scarier than the re-prefix is intellectual property law. As you'd assume, Mancini isn't happy that this loophole allows for fracturing of the franchise, especially since it's been going strong this whole time. Fans are a bit torn here as well, but that shouldn't come as a huge shock. Horror fans tend to hate reboots, or at least they claim to, and then talk about what a guilty pleasure 2009's Friday the 13th is. Now, to be fair, reboots aren't nearly as common in horror as remakes. When Batman reboots, you know you're going to get at least 2 or 3 movies in that series that follow that timeline. Horror doesn't always follow that path. The Mummy might actually be the easiest example of a reboot, but that's a weird franchise anyway. The original was essentially a remake of 1931's Dracula, and with no set source material to draw from, the series was able to do really whatever the hell they wanted. Eventually, the 1990s adventure tentpoles went up and hung around for a decade until it was decided that rebooting the series in a modern setting with Tom Cruise would be the best way to launch Universal's dark universe. Hindsight is 20/20. But sometimes, even when they try to reboot and it seems successful, the original series will still come back on them. I mean, look at Halloween. Rob Zombie had rebooted that series. New Michael, new Laurie, and completely new, unnecessary origin story. Then, a decade later, we got the third a recalibration. Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie was back, and the film was shaking off 40 years of history to give fans a fresh storyline that reset things all the way back to the original film. It wasn't the first time the Halloween franchise had tried recalibrating. Hell, it wasn't even the first time they tried recalibrating by bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis and skipping over a bunch of sequels. But it was arguably the best time they did it. And the recalibration has seemingly put a pulse back into the franchise, which Jason Blum is trying to continue. Revisiting success.
Watch new vids every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, only on Crypt TV.